I think it just because it's mealtime, people let their guards down. Maybe let your hair down a little bit, but we're still here to assist, not to do for them, but to insist and encourage them to engage in this social event, as opposed to it's just a task or a chore.
That's Toni Fisk, our guest today on the Season of Caring podcast, where there's hope for living, loving, and caring with no regrets. This is Rayna Neises, your host, and I'm glad that you've joined us today to talk more about dining with dignity. Toni is a published author of the 2021 Amazon #1 bestseller, Dine with Dignity, Unlocking the Mystery of Dementia and Dining. In addition to several professional publications, she's been engaged in the food and hospitality industry for over 35 years. Her professional career began at Walt Disney World, Epcot Center, and Marriott Hotels before transitioning to healthcare and senior living. Toni's daily operational engagement at the senior living communities across the United States stoked a concern regarding the care, training, and tools that were accessible to all the pillars of support services who were caring for our elders, particularly those living with dementia. Toni is a professional speaker with multiple dementia certifications as educator and trainer, working with professional care partners and family members. As a certified dietary manager and a senior living dining operations consultant, she has a deep commitment towards education and enlightenment in the care of persons living with dementia. Thanks so much, Toni, for being here today.
All right. Hey, Rayna, I'm glad to be here.
I'm excited to talk about this topic because I think there is so much involved in the process of eating for our elders in general, from the way that our taste buds change to how picky we are about what we want and how we want it. I think it can be a really challenging topic. And obviously, it's become your passion. So you're in agreement with me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's jump in and talk a little bit more about that. What has brought you into senior services and helping in this way?
Well, my career started many, many moons ago, and I had the opportunity. I was working for Marriott Hotels, and at that point in time, they got out of the healthcare business and partnered with Sodexo, which is a company that originates out of France. And they gave us the opportunity that we could choose either to stay in hotels or to go into the healthcare. And I decided I'm going to do the healthcare because hotels was not really that rewarding, working in restaurants, the front of the house, a lot of running around with no satisfaction, honestly. But with the healthcare piece, it was a whole new world. It gave me an opportunity to, how would I have ever come across that? You just really never know when you're going to make that left turn and you're going to find your next career path. It was quite an amazing journey for me, and I have basically enjoyed every moment of it, and I've loved it. So it's been fantastic. I worked my first hospital that I worked at, I believe was Tallahassee Regional Medical Center. And I went there as a retail manager in the hospital. And I was able to learn about the patient care aspect. And I did work in several hospitals, only for about 8-9 years. And then I had an opportunity to transition into senior living. And that was when I had already moved to New York on Long Island. And that's when I got my first experience working with our elders and getting to know what a wonderful group that embraces you. Very forgiving. They'll give you a lot of breaks, but they will hold you accountable, including their families. Mm-hmm. I love it. Fantastic.
So from there, then your experience within the dining room and trying to help their transition to group living, I think is the best way I think of it. My dad's sister has recently made that transition into assisted living where she doesn't have her own kitchen. She doesn't have her opportunity to fix her favorite things. And she's having some bumps in the road. So I imagine you saw quite a bit of that, of just trying to please a lot of people.
Absolutely. And then also, depending on where you're working, then you see the different ethnic groups that are in these communities. So in New York, there is a lot of pasta. right? And in the Midwest, probably have a lot of potatoes,
Mm-hmm.
maybe rice. And it's really funny when you see the different menus. So I have in my career, I've been able to travel all over the United States. I've spent a lot of time in the Midwest, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Chicago, Ohio. I spent a lot of time down south, also in Florida, the Carolinas, and of course, New York. So I've seen all of those different ethnic varieties. But the one great takeaway from all of it is that if you're engaging the residents and you're having them to participate in the menus and the menu selections, then it just makes for a happier group of people. And it doesn't matter whether you're working as an operator for a vendor. Okay. So I work with Sodexo and I work with Untitled, or you're working in a self-op community that is in-house. If you're not keeping those residents happy and fed with the food that they want to eat, it's like they don't want steak and lobster. They don't want steak. They want something that tastes great, has a nice texture to it, a good flavor profile, hot food hot, cold food cold, feed me on time, entertain me while you're there just by being nice and having small conversations. And they're totally satisfied because the residents, they see you all day long. You see them in the hallways, you see them at events. That was really a family atmosphere. And some of the best uh, staff members that I've ever worked with knew the residents so well, and they knew their family members and vice versa. And that really just makes for a great environment.
So as we're talking to family caregivers, one of the things that I think is so important is being a part of that team, even when you're not being the person who's providing the food, but rather when they're in a facility and they're having that opportunity, communication and being a part of that team, because those things are important. I know as we cared for my dad in the home and we brought caregivers in, we dealt with people making different things. And I think I've shared this before, but I found it so funny. So my dad used to enjoy hot rice with raisins and sugar and milk for breakfast in the morning. We had more than one caregiver that became a part of our team that were like, he eats rice? What does that mean? And one of them, I came in and she had a bowl of rice and she had the milk in a glass. And he was looking at it and trying to figure out what it was because she didn't realize it's like a cereal. That was something different that not everybody has enjoyed and probably came from his poor childhood. But it was important that his rice was hot, that his milk was cold, but you poured them together. He enjoyed breakfast. So there's so many things like that I think are important. And I love what you said, just getting to know the residents makes the difference. And in the relationships are always the key.
Agreed. And part of working with our elders, whether they have dementia or not, is understanding them and what their roots are and what their upbringing is. So, for example, I mean, that's a great example. So, I mean, so your father was a child in what year? The 1920s, the 1930s, during the Depression and whatnot. And how old are the caregivers now? How old are those care partners? In their 20s, in their 30s, they have no clue what that means. If it's not Frosted Flakes, instant packet of Quaker Oats, maybe they don't understand. They just can't even comprehend that.
Yeah, definitely. So from your experience of helping to help organizations feed their people well and work out the little bumps in the road that they run into, where did your interest in dementia care come in?
Oh gosh, part of my career, as I said, when I went into hospitals, I started in the retail. And I was very fortunate I was able to do the different positions. So I pretty much made my way all the way around. At a position that I had for 4 years, I was an executive chef at Brookdale Hospital in Brooklyn. So not only was it a 1,200-bed hospital with catering and retail, we also had 2 skilled nursing that were connected with it. And that's when I really got to see the textures and the different types of diets and a different level of care and attention that was paid to it. Because even at that point, they were very liberal. But as we, went through the process, they became more liberal in the skilled nursing, assisted living, memory care community. And we learn to get creative with the food. So if it's pureed food, or if it's a mechanical soft, or it's ground food, or maybe it's a fine dice, then we can still have flavorful food. It doesn't have to look like, the scoop and plop, which we call it, the 3 ice cream scoops of the meat, the veg, and the potato, whatever, the rice. And we can do a better job with this and make it look attractive and make it taste good. And first and foremost, which is always a huge fight, and the cook says, well, you're going to taste the food you made.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no reason why you don't want to eat it, right? If it was a plain slice of roast beef, you would eat it. Well, how come you won't eat it when it's ground or pureed? It's still the same roast beef, right? And if it's not, then we need to have a discussion, because it should be. And we should be serving whatever we're serving everyone else. They should get it. It's just a different consistency, but the flavor profile should be there. And we need to pay attention to that. And unfortunately, I saw a lot of that not happen. And I even had a flashback one time. They did the beef where they had just ground it. It was a buffalo chopper, so finally grinds it, where it was like sawdust, and then they would pour gravy on it. It's like, are you kidding me?
Oh.
And that was acceptable. It's like, no, it's not acceptable. You just really take it to heart, because you get to know them. You know who's getting that plate. You know it's Johnny Miller. And you want to make sure that Johnny is, he's a good guy. Why would I treat him any differently than anybody else? And you have to take on that mentality and really that burden of being an advocate and fight for them with your own staff, sad to say, but get them on the same page so that they understand. You're not just doing something, you're doing it for somebody. You're doing it for somebody's father, somebody's uncle, somebody's son. So let's put the human back into it and realize what you're doing. And that really drove me as I got further into my career, my experience, and I was out of the unit manager. And then I would see how we would have awesome care, awesome food at one community. And then you go down the road and it's garbage. And everything was different. The mood was different. The service was different. And not just dining, the whole community. It's like, oh my gosh, what can we do to make this better? And try to change people's behavior and get them to think differently about what they're doing. It's not a task. This is life and death. It could be, because if you have someone that can't eat solid food, okay, or if they have dysphagia, which is a swallowing issue, and it's too watery or it's too chunky. So puree should be smooth, but if you've got chunks in it, they could choke on it. They can aspirate. It could go down the wrong pipe, and they can literally drown on their food if you didn't prepare it correctly. So let me make sure, cook and server and manager and nursing, that you understand clearly what can go wrong. And it's almost a shock value sometimes, but it's true. And that just drove me to learn more and get to understand really what's happening on the inside. I know what's happening on the outside, the physicality and things like that. Now let me learn what's going on the inside and how we can work with that to make it a better experience. I can work on the culinary, I can work on that, but I have to get people to change their minds and their mindsets about how they're interacting and behaving with people living with dementia and people that are going through brain change and physical issues. We can do better, people. We can. And that's what brought me to it.
And education is the key. And because it truly is a lack of understanding of what's happening in the brain and why the person is behaving the way that they're behaving, there's reasons. And so few of us really understand those reasons that I think it becomes such an important mission to help people understand. So I love that through food, that's just one way, but it's such an important way to help people understand what's going on in the brain and what might be the barrier for these people to eat. Because I know it's so difficult as you're caring for a loved one who doesn't want to eat to have this constant, just take a few more bites, just take a drink. A lot of those things that we find ourselves trying to do as family. So you've referenced kind of the environment and interaction. Where do senses come into all of this?
Oh gosh. You know what? Part of the environment of a dining room where they're serving several tables of people. And let's just look at the table itself. And if you have someone that's in a wheelchair, is the wheelchair going underneath the table so that they are actually at the table? Or do the legs bump into the edge? So now they're an extra 2 feet away from this plate or from this bowl, which is another 6 to 8 inches away. And then when they go and they get something to eat, if they happen to have any tremors, what's happening? The food is spilling so that nothing actually makes it to their mouth. Now, we have social griefs here. And if they're embarrassed because they're spilling food or someone makes them feel bad, well, look at the mess you made. Why can't you? How come? And if now they have to wear a bib, right? An industrial bib. And I say that's a bib because it's an ugly word, because it's an ugly thing. So, that dying with dignity, do we have nice clothing protectors so that they can feel good about having to wear a piece of the deck with equipment? It's bad enough we have to do that. We know why, because maybe physically you're struggling. But can we make it just something a little bit nicer where if it looks nice, and for the ladies, because they're dressed, they come dressed. And some of them, depending on where you're at, they come finely dressed. And if they fear of spilling food, they're just not going to eat. Oh, I'm not hungry, because they don't want to be embarrassed. They have their pride. The noise level in the dining rooms, if the TV is going or the radio, it doesn't have to be so high and so loud. And the chit chat, if you're not talking with the resident, engaging them in conversation, then really it should be kept so minimal. The staff and should be talking over people. They're there, engage them in a conversation. And I think what really sometimes bothers me is that if you were doing the ADL, right, the activities of daily life, where nursing is very focused on ensuring that they're doing their physical therapy or they're doing their occupational therapy, how is dining not still an event that should be monitored and managed professionally, just like any of those other activities? Well, it should be. And I think it just because it's mealtime, people let their guards down.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're still on the clock. You're still working. Okay, maybe you can let your hair down a little bit, but we're still here to assist, not to do for them, but to assist and encourage them to engage in this social event, as opposed to it's just a task or a chore. And if the food comes in and it smells good, the food is set down, not banged down, and it's served in courses, and it looks good and looks tasty. And P.S., we give them time to eat it. Instead of, we got to be out of here because recreation dining room at 1:00. It's not going to fly. It's just not going to work. So we have to be conscious of that. Sometimes that gets in the way. Our own agendas get in the way. And leadership needs to step back and recognize what's happening. I wonder why there's weight loss. I wonder why malnutrition is being charted, and wonder why they're not engaging, or there's behavior issues and they're refusing to eat. Well, are they really refusing to eat? Or have we not made this a successful activity for them to eat? And that's the bonus of people like yourself and myself. When we come in, we are fresh eyes and we can recognize, well, wait a minute, I didn't even notice that. Because you look at it every day or you hear it every day, you don't pay attention to it. So you have to have some fresh eyes come in and say, maybe you want to try this, or you can do this a little differently, or whatever the case may be.
I think it's so fascinating to consider. I know our experience with pureed food was not a good one. And as my dad progressed and actually had a surgery and had to go to rehab, he ended up in a rehab that did their best, I guess, but it was not the food. I don't think the person serving nor myself would have wanted to enjoy it. So he really didn't enjoy it. It was very difficult to watch and to try to find a way to tempt him. So we have to understand how important it is that they have the right consistency of food because it is a situation of life or death. But at the same time, I love that you're highlighting it has to taste good and it has to be something that is presented in a way that makes you want to eat it, not makes you think that it should go in the trash.
And the most common phrase is like, that looks like dog food.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, you know what? You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And shame on me as a professional to let this come out. And we have to be advocates as caregivers and care partners to say, hey, you know what? You guys can do better. And I challenge you to do it because you're not staying there for free. You guys are paying a lot of money. So people need to step up their game.
Inviting yourself as a part of the team if you're not invited, but really making sure that it's a conversation that if you're the person that you're caring for can talk for themselves, that you help to equip them with the information, help them really feel empowered to ask the questions and be able to figure out what the hurdle is. Because like you said, there's so many different things that can get in the way. I think everyone's trying to do their best. Sometimes they just don't realize that they're not. So helping to find the answers to help them move there. Well, thank you so much, Toni, for visiting with us today. How can my listeners get in touch with you? Where can they find your book? Share a little bit of that with us.
Well, you can get my book from Amazon, any of the Barnes & Noble, any of those folks. If you reach out to me directly, then I can send you a signed book. I'm happy to do that. Let's see, you can go on my website, which is dinnerwarehc.info, INFO, and that's DINNERWEAR, where is enclosed, HC, like in healthcare.info. So, but you can just find me on LinkedIn, Toni Fisk. You can just Google my name and my company will come up. So I'm actually pretty easy to get a hold of these days. Yeah. It's only 8 letters, TONIFISK.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. I think as family caregivers, eating is such an important thing that we often, just like facilities, forget that it can have so many nuances and hurdles. And so really helping us to think more about that. I hope, listeners, that that's been helpful to you today. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And just a reminder, a Season of Caring podcast has been created for the encouragement of family caregivers. If you have financial, legal, or medical questions, be sure to consult your local professionals and take heart in your season of caring. No Regrets, Hope for Your Caregiving season is celebrating its first birthday on June 1st. And we will be starting the walk through No Regrets together June 6th. So it's not too late to sign up. Visit aseasonofcaring.com to sign up for the free opportunity for you and I to walk through No Regrets, Hope for Your Caregiving season together. I would love to have the opportunity to talk with you, encourage you, and help you think through some of the things that I brought out in my book. Thanks, and I hope that you will join us.